doctor should look at it as soon as possible.
It is the way in which we propagate our species.
Please demonstrate how this is accomplished.
So, what's next? I don't know.
Hi, and welcome to Casual Trek. I'm Charlie Etheridge Nunn. I'm a writer and an X-Men fan.
Hi, I'm Miles Reed Lobato. I'm a writer, a stand-up comedian, and a Doctor Who fan.
In Casual Trek, we're going to be watching stories from 3 different Star Trek shows and ranking them on a big list from best to worst. We love Star Trek, but it's far from our first fandom, which makes us the ultimate objective voice on such a task. Today, we're not even going to bother ranking episodes. Instead, we're going to give you a bit of background about us, who these 2 idiots talking Star Trek are, as well as our experiences with all of the series, and probably some X-Men talk from me.
And far too much about how Gallifreyans from Doctor Who don't have sex from me.
Okay, so I guess first of all, who are you, Miles?
Let's put it down. I am. Who am I? God, that's that. Well, I'm Miles. I am from the wonderful little city of Brighton, England, but due to reasons, I live in America because it seemed like a good idea at the time, and thanks to Brexit, was a really good idea at the time.
I wanted to smugly say, "How's that working out for you?" And then I remembered I'm still in England. It's a daily battle for who's got it worse, really.
A daily battle of despair, pretty much. Like Asta said, I am a huge Doctor Who fan, huge Star Wars fan. Like when I thinking about it, and in terms of like my history of Trek, I actually encountered Star Trek before Doctor Who, from the Marvel UK Next Generation comic, which reprinted DC Comics material. So like that was like one of my first experiences with Star Trek. I was too young for like early Next Gen. I remember like bits and pieces, and then like came into it like mid 90s after I discovered my love of Doctor Who. And so yeah, like my first proper Star Trek would probably be the animated series, and then like the repeats of TOS in like the early 90s, and just from there on.
I'm probably right in thinking you're a younger person than me.
I was born 83. I can't remember what year you were born in.
So I was born in 1980, and yet somehow in our many years of friendship, it always feels like you are the far older nerd out of the 2 of us. And I'm still not sure entirely how that happened. For me, Star Trek was like, I'm still in Brighton in England now, and I was born to 2 parents who were quite they'd often go to hippie festivals. They went to Glastonbury before it was cool, not in a hipster way, but it was just mud before it was cool.
Quick question, were either of your parents Hawkwind fans?
I don't think so, somehow. But both of them, as it turns out, were nerdier than I think they ever thought, they ever realized. And I was left, my brother and I were left in an open-air showing of Star Trek 4 and of Empire Strikes Back. And that was my first experience of Star Wars and Star Trek. And to this day, I can't remember which I experienced first.
Damn, that is a double bill.
Yes, yeah. They started me young.
Oh yeah. See, I think the reason why I might feel like a much older person is that I'm just one of those. Okay, I could be just really pretentious and be like, I'm one of them old souls. I'm an old man in a young person's body. But no, see, my parents were cooler than me, and I think my teenage rebellion was just to become a gigantic basement dwelling nerd. That was my teenage rebellion.
It's a good incentive, definitely. So You were saying you saw it in the 90s. Did you see a lot of Star Trek as it aired? Because I had to go back to it.
I saw like chunks of it, like because I always remember like TOS was always all up on Fridays on BBC Two. Next Gen was like Wednesdays. Thursdays was DS9, and Voyager was Sunday. And like I kind of dropped off midway with like DS9 and Voyager because I discovered Babylon 5, Twin Peaks, Blake 7, and The Prisoner in pretty much equal succession. And Trek, I was kind of like, this is boring now. And so I kind of just fell away from Trek. So I've never actually finished watching a Trek show which wasn't animated by the people who gave us He-Man.
God bless those people.
Those cheap people.
Oh, so cheap. It's amazing the reused footage that they did for that. And, fair play to them.
Yeah, animation is expensive.
Yeah, for me, I did like most nerds of the 90s and saw bits and pieces on BBC Two when it wasn't being interrupted by snooker. But I started far later. I started like late TNG, early Deep Space Nine. And
Yeah.
instead, most of how I saw it was from a friend who gave me two giant bin bags full of VHS tapes he'd either taped from television or, because he ran a video shop, he had tape to tape from videos that he then sold on. Because I don't know if you remember this, but Star Trek VHS tapes were expensive and you get like 2 episodes of tape.
It was 2 episodes. Quick question. Was it a video shop in Brighton?
Yes, it was.
What was it called?
It was called Hunky Dory, and it still exists to this day.
Oh, hang on. Where Hunky? Okay, that sounds familiar. Oh my god. Where is that?
I was going to say, are we getting to niche stuff already with geographical locations in Brighton?
Sorry, you have to understand. Like, I feel sorry for a lot of my friends here who, when we're talking about like niche video collecting, I end up going along like tirades about like looking for obscure films in weird shops in Brighton. Like, there was like free enterprise on like London Road back in the day. Then there was like,
yeah, that's where I bought the Generation X TV movie.
Oh dear God, you bought that. Like, that was where I bought like my first copy of The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai. Then there was a place in what was the place that the Comedia is now? When it was like the market.
Oh God, I forget its name, but yeah, where the Comedia is now, which is like a theatre cinema thing. It used to be what I imagined those kind of American trash mall kind of places being. Future Charlie here, as it's extremely important to this Star Trek podcast. What Mars and past Charlie are talking about was called the Jubilee Shopping Hall. It was a mess. It was just random stalls full of tat, including Jabba's hut, which...
Oh God! Memories!
All right,
memories!
Jabba.
Oh man, I remember when his shop moved to like the corner of where I lived, and like there was the
God, when he died, he had a Star Wars themed funeral.
Of course he did. Of course he fucking did.
Oddly enough, he was the main place I bought Star Trek Next Generation action figures from, because I used to have, and I might still have the accessories for, a number of Star Trek figures. I painted them as my own characters for completely different things, but I owned a lot of tiny phasers and tricorders.
Oh man, hang on. So were these your own characters or were these your Star Trek OCs?
No.
Quick question. In the 90s, were you making Star Trek self-insert fanfic with your action figures?
Somehow, no.
Okay.
I was using Warhammer paints, which are not cheap paints, as it turned out, to make characters from stories I used to tell my little brother so he'd go to sleep, which were all blatant rip-offs of Star Wars and Star Trek, and that one TV movie of Battlestar Galactica, which was all that I saw before the new version of it. Um, so, while no, technically this wasn't Star Trek fan fiction, in another way, entirely yes, it kind of
Basically
was.
was.
Yeah, it basically was. God, yeah. So those VHS tapes, all of them were unlabeled, and all I had was an already out of date Star Trek encyclopedia, this giant blue hardback. So I'd go tape by tape, fast forwarding because he'd packed tons of them on big VHS tapes and labeling them. So I too have not seen an entire Star Trek series apart from the currently running ones like Lower Decks and Picard. But it's because I have huge gaps wherever he didn't manage to find a copy. So I think I've seen most of Next Gen, but I genuinely couldn't tell you whether I had or not.
Okay, I do know. Sorry, I do know Hunky Dory.
Yes.
I may have to my phone back on, because that guy used to be at the market, and he banned me for a couple months because I kept looking through the comics, never actually buying them.
How dare you, Miles? How very dare you?
When the guy forgave me and I actually started giving him money in exchange for goods and services, he became a lot better about it.
Yeah, so he and I were brought into a conspiracy to fake the existence of several Magic players to help drive up pre-order amounts so that my now deceased former employer would be able to sell Magic cards early to people. So the owner of Hunky Dory and I go way back.
And apparently the owner of Hunky Dory and you have perpetuated fraud, which you'll now talk about on a podcast. So we've already gone from Star Trek to weird nostalgia to dumb true crime.
Well,
in under 13 minutes.
Look, true crime podcasts sell.
And we have yet to actually talk about an episode of Star Trek.
Okay. That's a good point for listeners at home. You're probably hearing this after our first episode of Casual Trek. This is where we're calibrating our systems. Almost, we're trying to figure out what our tastes are as far as Star Trek goes, what our experiences are, and I think you'll find from what you've heard so far, it's I'd say middle to not at all, somewhere between those. Yeah,
like in top 10 series, science fiction fantasy franchises I like. I would put Star Trek in the mid tier, just above Battlestar Galactica, but underneath Thunderbirds and Jerry Anderson level stuff.
Wow. Okay.
I like Joe 19. Okay, I don't like Joe 19 more than I like Star Trek. That's a lie. Thunderbirds was cool though.
Well, yes. So it's interesting hearing you've mainly finished with the animated series. I've not seen a single episode. I've just seen footage and GIFs of them, and that's it. I've seen 2 episodes of the original series as well.
You see, if you've seen a still of the animated series, you have basically watched the animated series animation quality in that one still.
Cool, and by the sounds of it, a good percentage of the animated series.
Pretty much, it's 90. The animated series, 70% shots of people looking really close to the camera. If you're one of those people who don't like close-ups of people's eyes, never watch Star Trek the animated series.
Wow.
It's facial close-ups.
Oh dear. Okay, so we've covered how much we've seen of the Treks, kind of. We're nerds. We collect tat. We collect a lot of tat. What is your favorite bit of Star Trek tat that you currently own?
Okay, favorite bit of Star Trek tat I currently own. For some reason, my wife picked up the next gen Star Trek emblem badge at a convention. The reason why it's my most beloved current bit of Star Trek tat is my last week at my former job was last week was my last week at my last. You can tell
God.
I'm a writer. I have such a good command of the English language. My last week at my job was last week, and as a churlish prank on my part, you're not allowed to wear non. This is an international coffee chain which should unionize, but is not unionizing or is involving in union busting activities over here in the States. So for my last week, I was wearing a Star Trek pin on my apron for no other reason than to say, hey, check me out. I'm wearing a Star Trek pin on my apron.
Oh, you rebel. The Marquis would be proud, apart from, the Federation symbol. God, that's cool. I always wanted one of those badges as a kid. The closest I got was filing the little peg from a Star Trek action figure base that was almost that badge.
But that is kind of like my most beloved bit of Star Trek tat right now.
For me, I'm missing my favorite bit of Star Trek tat. I love it. I lost it maybe 6 years ago now. I had, or at least the flat I was in, had an Enterprise bottle opener. And it was so good. It was so chunky. Like, it would do a murder if you threw it at someone.
My wife and I, we have a Enterprise pizza cutter.
Oh, wow.
Which is shaped like the classic. Yeah, the trouble is because of like where the cells are, it is really uncomfortable to use because like it's not a nice handle, it is a chunky handle. But I just remembered something else we've got somewhere in the flat, which is a Captain Kirk Wrath of Khan action figure, but it's a Toys R Us exclusive. So instead of the regular mold of Shatner's head, it's him. It's a mold of Shatner's head when he's doing the Khan, when he's meant to be doing the Khan scream. But because of the quality of the toy, it kind of looks like he's you got your William Shatner passing a kidney stone action figure.
Oh dear. I've seen maybe 2, maybe 3 episodes of the original series now. I'm hoping there's not an episode where he passes a kidney stone. I'm fine with that being a surprise if he does in any of them.
Star Trek confronted a lot of social. It pushed back on a lot of the social norms at the time, and one of those was the covering of kidney stones in a mainstream science fiction drama in the Cold War era America.
Wow. See, it's a deep show, deeper than I even thought coming into it. Okay, so out of all of the shows, of which we've apparently almost seen some of between us, what is your favorite series or your favorite film?
I would say my favorite series is Deep Space Nine, because it has a main character who shares the same name as me, and I relate to him because he's overworked and put upon.
Well, and again, he's from a good union line.
He's a good line of union. He's from a good line of union men.
I go back and forth on him. I love the webcomics where Miles O'Brien leads a horribly lonely life.
Oh, those comics are depressing.
They're amazing and sad and kind of lovely all at the same time.
Kafka would read those and go, "That's a bit much."
But between that and then DS9 Miles, where it's like, okay, comrade, I'm on board. He is done with all the nonsense. Like he lives with the nonsense all the time on the Enterprise, and there
he's what a guy from the UK would be like in Star Trek, which is tired and just wants a pint.
Yes,
he just wants a pint and a bit of pie.
Like, what? Fine, we've all turned into apes now. Fine, okay, but I'm going to be late for pub. I want to play darts.
I want a bit of pie.
That disappointed sigh kind of thing that you get from from the overworked smart one there who is underappreciated.
It's the overworked working class man who has somehow managed to get himself a really cushy job and doesn't know how he's still keeping it, but will work to keep it regardless.
Definitely. See, it's that tragic thing of going, oh yeah, well, I'm also going to pick the popular choice and go, my favorite series has also been DS9 from everything I've seen of it. It's the arcs. I think it's one of the ones that has aged the best, as we're wanting shows that keep plots going and don't necessarily have to have a whole season dedicated to a single thing. But
it has, for me, it has the best characters. Whereas like TOS is like really good, is like is good, campy fun. TNG is, from what from the bits from what the majority I've seen of it, is like an okay show, but has a cast who are really good at of like pumping up the quality of like some really shoddy scripts.
See, I'm sure I used to love Voyager, and enough time passed that I called on it. And it had a lot of issues. The Star Trek's had, certainly from Berman and some of the other folks behind the scenes, it sounded like a lot of these shows were good despite some of what went on in the background.
Like Voyager and Enterprise, well, have been the two shows I've seen the least. The one thing I remember from Voyager was like the day Princess Diana died. That was the first bit of TV that day on like the main British channels, which hadn't been like 24/7 coverage of Princess Diana dying. This is really dark.
Wow. I mean, yeah, it's yeah. With Voyager, I think I saw maybe half of the show. I definitely saw the start and the end, and I came away thinking it needed half as many episodes, maybe.
I saw up to like random. I dropped off when they kind of introduced 7 of 9, but I do remember making an effort to watch the episode when they're basically doing a parody of Flash Gordon serials.
Yes, yeah, I'm pretty sure I saw that one too.
Yeah. Enterprise has the best theme tune. You can all fight me on this.
Show over. We're done. No.
Cancel.
Oh my god. It's. I hated that. Okay, I've already described fraud. The first television show I ever acquired from the back of a lorry named Kazar, was Enterprise. I acquired the first 11, and I don't think I made it through those. And that show, like, if I was watching it and it had a skip function, like on a DVD or on a streaming service, I probably would have got further through it. Much like if I ever had a copy of Gilmore Girls where I couldn't skip the theme tune, it was going to be a rough time. So yeah, with Enterprise, maybe I'd have lasted all 11 acquired copies of Enterprise episodes if I could tolerate the theme tune or skip it. But alas, I couldn't. And my love of Scott Bakula couldn't push me through further.
I think they wanted to use Beautiful Day by U2.
Yes.
But like couldn't afford, like not even Star Trek can afford like the rights to Bono.
To be honest, I watched the Center Seat series of documentaries on Amazon Prime as prep for this show, and it seems like a lot of the struggles Star Trek has had was with its need to keep the budget as absolutely low as possible. And I know every TV show's got an amount of that, but it feels like they did a lot of grifts to try and keep it as cheap as possible. Sometimes to its detriment, sometimes personally, I quite love that level of really cheap innovation that ends up happening.
You see, you say that Star Trek it was made on the cheap, but you're talking to a guy who who's been a fan of Doctor Who since VHS. So, like, even when you're talking about like cheap TV, like Star Trek, compared to Doctor Who, Star Trek still looked like bloody Star Wars level budget.
Well,
Because like Doctor Who is literally like, hey, here's some Coke bottles and some sticky back plastic, and we're gonna have a space armada from these two things.
I guess one of the key differences I think about with the original Star Trek and Doctor Who is Star Trek you can dress up a soundstage. Like it's gonna look rough and things are going to be made out of card and polystyrene. Doctor Who just goes to a quarry instead, and you can't dress those up as well.
Look, Star Trek didn't go to a quarry; it went to like a bunch of mountains outside LA. I would say like where both Star Trek and Doctor Who, especially in its early days, had the same similarity is that you've clearly got a bunch of actors who are theatrically trained and not TV and not like who came up through theater first. Because you definitely see that in like Shatner.
Yeah,
Shatner is very clearly a classically theatrically trained actor, and it shows. Can you hear the power washing being like the motor going outside my house right now?
it's not loud, but it's there. Hopefully,
Okay.
the audience will just assume it's some kind of background engine noise, which we
Yes,
hear.
we are recording this in space.
Yeah, we're like in a Jeffries tube or something.
Look, if Star Trek had quarries nearby to shoot in, there'd be a lot more quarries in Star Trek.
Oh hell yeah, definitely. Well, it's like Buffy, where the graveyards were just a bit of a car park that had some grass on it.
I think we should call the podcast "Casual Digressions."
Wow. Okay, so what I'm going to say is speed round then. Um, each series, I want you to give me your favourite character, and I will do the same back. So, original series.
Oh, probably McCoy.
From what little I've seen, probably Bones.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep,
yeah, just
yeah, yeah.
a stubborn old bastard.
He's a grumpy git in space. Love it.
Yeah, yeah. The idea of like they wanted to make him look more heroic, and somehow DeForest Kelly fought through that. Like emotionally, mentally, he still brought a curmudgeon's attitude to a hero's look.
Yeah.
Okay, next generation. Who's your favorite?
Ooh. Oh,
Mm.
that's difficult. Oh, pass.
Pass. Okay, I'll give you two because I have no sense of my own rules. Why are you passing, pray tell though?
Hey, it's really hard because like it's like the actors are fine. It's just the characters in next gen kind of feel like action figures. Like they just don't have like they don't have personalities. They just have a thing. Like Data's an android. Worf is grumpy. Like maybe Riker, but only because of all the memes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that's where my as a kid I loved LaForge. Like the engineer side of him, the kind of he wasn't as high up as the rest of them, so it meant that he could get a bit more stuck in at the low level, inexperienced
Yeah,
character kind of stuff. And of course, as someone who went through quite a few disability based things growing up, seeing some of that reflected, even if it's entirely differently presented than my own issues, was kind of cool. But as an adult, I think I have a kind of a realization of like Starfleet is half nerds and half swashbuckling idiots.
it it's jocks and nerds. It's high
Yeah,
school.
yeah, it is. But
Yeah,
you know, the kind of nice jocks almost.
like right. I when thinking back on Star Trek, a friend of mine, Claire, started rewatching Next Gen during lockdown, and I was talking with her about it. I realized that Riker is like the least toxic personification of the alpha male you're going to get in fiction, because he has all the alpha male character traits, but he's also generally a good guy.
Yeah,
Like,
he's
so he's like, he doesn't like he like, he clearly likes, sex and like having a good time, but like, he's gonna call them afterwards.
yeah. He'll cook you breakfast. He won't just ghost on you.
Like, Riker won't neg.
No,
Riker doesn't
no,
neg.
God, that'd be weird. Riker doesn't feel like someone who'd neg you.
Okay,
Riker,
if we ever do t-shirts, I think Riker doesn't neg should be our first one.
wow. Personally, I feel Riker definitely shoved some nerds into lockers at Starfleet Academy, but he's
yeah.
grown. He's definitely grown since then. He has that feeling of like, yeah, I was a bit of an ass, but now, still gonna do my whole kind of swagger. Go, ladies, are you into jazz solos?
I'm gonna swagger. I'm going to every single chair I see, I'm going to mount like a graceful gazelle.
Oh, I know it was because of back issues and such, but it's the most Riker thing. It is that perfect, confident, like, I see the back of a chair. I don't care for its rules.
When you see it, you can't unsee it.
Hell yeah. And it's incredible seeing it even at the very inception of Next Generation. Okay, so quickly now, DS9, favorite character.
But DS9, probably O'Brien or Rom.
Ooh, Rom's an interesting
because Rom's an interesting. I like see. I'm a huge fan of the trope of the guy who's socially really dumb, but like really ridiculously over. Like really ridiculously skilled in like one thing.
Yeah. Nice. I was wondering if it was just that you could relate after enough times having to work for awful people in
Customer.
Yeah, serving drinks to idiots.
Yes. Yeah, Rom is the personification of the time spent in the hospitality industry.
Wow. Okay. For me, it's probably Bashir. I
really.
Okay, so
look, I've read your opinions on Bashir when watching the pilot, so you have to understand if I'm very surprised.
So Bashir's a fucking idiot. I don't know whether or not we're beeping or swearing or anything at this point. I might beep it. I'm probably too lazy to. But Bashir wants to be Riker. He wants to be this swashbuckling Star Trek original series guy on a frontier. Problem is, there are people on that frontier, and they don't like that.
Bashir wants to be sexy.
Yeah.
No, but no one else wants him to be sexy.
I mean, like, he's a handsome man, but at the same time, his kind of not not necessarily like anti-charisma, but his naivete, like his relatively problematic naivete at the start of the show, going, "Oh, I'm like a disaster tourist," kind of thing. It's wonderful and awful because he's there to get slapped down every time.
Bashir is the most British.
Yes.
Bashir is every British guy on a holiday.
Yeah, and Alexander Siddig portrays that starry-eyed wonder where he doesn't realise that he's being rude to all these cultures who have just been through hell. But he can do that and all of the weird, like, genetic experiment stuff. He delivers very well. And once he and Garak meet, it's like, please, these two are brilliant together. Just all of that, a show of that, please.
Maybe it's Bashir's disaster English in space is why we see like 3 English people in the future in like on other planets in Starfleet, because they, you have these English people going to all these strange new worlds and going, "Excuse me, where can I buy some fish and chips?"
Oh dear. What? And they're told that planet over there, go away.
That's Earth. Get some fish and chips there, mate.
Yeah. So yeah. Okay, Voyager. I've realised I don't have an answer for this one. Shit. Voyager.
I'm going to be naughty and say Seven of Nine's catsuit.
I mean, that's fair. Like, hearing the horrors that went on for her with wearing the costume, I feel an amount of guilt for that, but also
same.
I get it. For me, it's probably either Harry Kim, because again, I like a rookie, or the emergency medical hologram, because I'm extremely basic.
No, I want to change my. I want to change my answer.
Okay.
I want to change it to the Doctor, because of course I would love a character called the Doctor.
Of course you'd love a character. Yes. Yeah. I should have seen that one coming. Oh my god. It's a shame that when they did a Star Trek Doctor Who comic, it wasn't a Star Trek Voyager Doctor Who comic, just to be able to play with that more. Okay, so next up, difficult one, especially for me with my under 10 episodes of experience, Enterprise.
Again, I'm going to cheat and say Scott Bakula.
Yeah.
Because I love Quantum Leap so much. And not for the character. It's just, I like seeing... It's watching Scott Bakula, and I keep waiting for Dean Stockwell to turn up.
Yeah.
Which he does in an episode. Ooh. But I'm always waiting for Scott Bakula to look in a mirror and see someone else and go, "Oh boy."
I mean, he never went home again. So if he's still going by the time you're in that future, then it makes sense.
I need to make a digression here relating to a different podcast.
Oh god.
And a lot of unfortunate, unintentional, but actually quite intentional bullying I've done to a friend of mine over the years. Because I will keep sending him a screenshot of the Dr. Sam Beckett never returned home, just to keep screwing with him, because I might be a bastard to my friends. And he's on a podcast called Two Boobs Watch the Tube, and their first episode was Quantum Leap. And Sean is explaining the ending of Quantum Leap to his friend Kevin. And there's a point where he's talking about the ending, and he basically stops and goes, "God damn it, Miles." And then there's a point, and then you hear Kevin go, "Sean, are you crying?" Because I've just emotionally beaten him down with this one screen cap of the ending of Quantum Leap.
So, is this a warning for me for future episodes? Like, should I actually just escape? Should I flee the podcast?
No. Maybe. Yes.
If you can find an equivalent Star Trek finale screen cap to torment me with.
No, I need to find it would have to be an equivalent of an X-Men comic.
Oh, how dare you.
So it would have to be the worst X-Men comic. So it might just be Exploding Communion Wafers.
Yeah, the Draco. It has to be the Draco. Okay,
or a screen cap of when Juggernaut did it with She-Hulk.
I mean, good for him, I guess.
Yeah.
For her, she's had lower points as well. Okay, so Enterprise, I'm going to cheat this time and say the dog, because dogs are great. Yeah.
Yeah, you love a doggo.
Okay. Discovery, I guess, is the next one. I think we might both have the same answer here.
Is your answer Tilly or Saru?
Oh god, how dare you make me choose now? My answer was going to be Tilly. Like, I love Saru.
I love Tilly. I relate a lot to Tilly, but honestly, Saru and Doug Jones is possibly the best performance of an alien in a TV show. Like, I can't think.
I don't know
I
if you had this as well. In season 2, I found myself just watching his hands just slowly drifting back and
No,
forth idly.
it's the physicality. I can't think of enough. Like, I've seen so many TV shows with so many people dressed in makeup, and then basically acting like a human in makeup delivering dialogue. Whereas watching like Saru's physicality and then also watching his character evolve from where it is at the start to like season 1 to like where he is by season 3, it's like it's phenomenal acting.
Mm.
Like, it is just, I can watch him, I can just watch his character tics and mannerisms all day.
Excellent. See, I've got nothing as impressive to be able to say about Tilly. I just like a disaster of a person. I think I've realised I hadn't even thought about it until this very chaotic podcast. I generally like people that are in over their head but trying their best in Star
Oh,
Trek.
yeah. We're British, it's what we do.
Well, yeah, I know they're all experts. They're all great kind of good people who are trying their best, but as long as at least one of them isn't competent, I'm going to root for that one person.
Yeah. You have to have the one person who is just clearly done with everything, but can't call in sick because it's Star Trek. You can't call in sick.
Well, yeah. Okay, so closing out now, Picard. Any good characters?
I might have to say oh god, I've forgotten his name. But the guy who has the ship, Rios.
Yes, Rios.
But it might just be I like the one scene from Picard where it's in the holodeck with the 7 different Rios themed holograms.
He's okay.
Like, it's hard to, like, Picard, there is very few, like I've seen like the first season and 2 episodes from the second. There is very few characters for me to kind of grab a hook onto.
For a show that's trying desperately to be a kind of Star Trek does prestige drama, that is definitely a problem. I think, like, my anti-favourite character is definitely the Lord of the Rings elf that they got on board.
Oh, yeah, that guy.
Yeah, I'd rather not deal with his nonsense. But I think, I mean, I liked, even though she barely appeared in it, the Irish Romulan from the Vineyard, because that was someone that called Picard out on his self-indulgent bullshit. And that was quite good. Also, she was in Eternal Law, which I knew I would have to drop in at some point in any of these episodes. So I may as well rip that plaster off and remind everyone that there was once a legal drama in the UK about angels who came to Earth to act like Phoenix Wright. Actually, they were supposed to be lawyers, but they would solve murders, poke around detective, like, around everything. And she was the housekeeper for the 2 good angels who were all right. And then there was a bad angel who was played by Brutus from Rome. Tobias Menzies, I think it was. Like, it had a good cast, and it was only partway through Picard season 2. Spoilers, she's in some of Picard season 2. I was like, oh no, that's the housekeeper from Eternal Law. Literally only me and Emma, who refused to watch Picard season 2, would ever know about the existence of Eternal Law. And now, dear listeners, you do too. So yeah, that's possibly my favorite.
Okay,
and
yeah.
You've seen what, 4 episodes of Strange New Worlds? I've seen 2.
I live in the States, so I can actually legally watch it and not like acquire it off the back of a lorry.
I've no idea what you're talking about. I entered a Zen dream state and somehow remote viewed the first 2 episodes.
You just somehow legally acquire these things off streaming service.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I had some words with some Ferengi, and they managed to get me a copy.
A mate who works in camp. You know, a friend who works in Camp Town. He gives you the stuff in bin. He gives you the stuff in bin bags.
Exactly. If I saw most of this series on bin bags taped from VHS, it's full circle this way. But in Strange New Worlds, even though it is still airing as we're recording this, have you a favorite yet?
Ooh, um, I really like Pike. I really like Hemmer, the blind engineer.
Yes.
He
Yeah.
he hasn't really done much. He did a bit more in this episode because like for the last few episodes when he's been in it, he's basically been around to be smug and superior to everyone else in the room, which obviously, as someone from England, love it. But I do at the moment it's definitely Pike. You know, it's really nice seeing it's really nice as again having it. You know, it's nice having that very kind of you don't get the kind of square jawed space hero so much in sci-fi anymore. Without them trying to heavily deconstruct it somehow. So
Mm.
it is nice to see that kind of he is so clean cut, square jawed. You half expect him to see him like an old like 50s pulp cover,
Yeah.
punching at an alien.
He seems like the unproblematic version of that. Um,
Yeah.
Now, personally, I'm a Cyclops fan, so you know I love Pike. He's a man with the weight
Oh,
of the world.
we're both Cyclops fans.
He's got the weight of the world, but he can flip it and go, fucking hell, space, love it. This wacky bullshit going on, perfect.
Love the job. You
Love
know,
it.
Pike could unironically say the line, the Cyclops line. I don't alphabetize my plans because that only implies I have 26.
Yes, 100%. Now, I like Laan, the Noonien Singh relative, because I always like a Paris Geller style harsh person.
I like Una, number one.
Yes. I well, I feel I've not seen enough of her yet. I loved her in the Star Trek The Early Voyages comic that Marvel did, and I'm assuming because they're both inspired by the same performance that I'll get on with her in this.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've got some similar tastes. I guess unsurprisingly, given we mostly rant to each other about X-Men and Doctor
The same
Who.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got a couple of different ones and a billion blind spots. So when we're actually going through the show, ranking them, hopefully it's not just going to be unanimous every single time.
Here's hoping.
Yeah, I think you and I have a few different perspectives on some of these shows. And yeah, hopefully this will have all worked. We'll have edited it. I guess you'll all see it in your podcatcher if it did, in which case go us.
Yep.
And yeah, get back to listening to the regular episodes where we rate and talk about different Star Trek episodes. Okay.
Yep.
See you on the regular show, I guess.
See you on the flippity flop. We're still working this. We're still working this.
Yeah, I figured out an introduction. I did not think about a close. So bye.
Yeah.
You have been listening to Casual Trek by Charlie Etheridge Nunn and Miles Reed Lobato. The intro theme was by Alfred Etheridge Nunn. Star Trek's owned by Paramount, and Casual Trek is part of the Nerd and Tie network.